Good evening. Welcome to the July 12th, 2021 Troy City Council meeting. Please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Father in heaven, we give you thanks for this day and thanks for the blessings you've given each and every one of us. We ask that you continue to bless us this evening as we work through tonight's agenda on our Troy City Council. We ask that you be with the residents of Troy who were affected by today's tanker crash on I-75, especially be extra mindful of the first responders who so gallantly were there to help to secure and to put out the fire, as well as be with the driver of the tanker truck as he recovers from any injuries that he sustained. We ask that you continue to bless the residents of Troy with peace and prosperity and help us continue to work through this summer as we come out of the COVID-19 pandemic. Please keep us all safe. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The July 12th, 2021 Troy City Council meeting is now called to order. I'll ask for the roll call, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks?
Here.
Councilmember Chamberlain Crainga?
Here.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
All present. First on the agenda is certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have one this evening. C1 is a proclamation to declare July 22nd, 2021 World Fragile X Day in the city of Troy. And I'm joined today by Ted Kutilish, who will meet me down at the podium. I'll present the proclamation. So I'm going to read this into the record, Ted. Thank you for being here with us this evening.
Thank you for having us.
So I've got a proclamation to declare July 22nd, 2021 World Fragile X Day in the city of Troy. Whereas Fragile X is the most common inherited cause of autism and intellectual disabilities worldwide and affects 1 in 4,000 males and 1 in 6,000 females, the Fraxa Research Foundation is an international 501c3 nonprofit organization whose mission is to find effective treatments and ultimately a cure for Fragile X syndrome. And whereas since its founding in 1994, Fraxa has funded over $30 million in Fragile X research. The foundation funds scientific research at universities worldwide. Breakthroughs in Fragile X research are also likely to help people affected by autism, Alzheimer's disease, and other brain disorders. And whereas Fragile X syndrome is the most common cause of inherited intellectual disability and the most common known genetic cause of autism or autism spectrum disorders, over 1.5 million Americans are carriers of a Fragile X mutation and thus have or are at risk for developing a Fragile X associated disorder. And over 100,000 Americans have Fragile X syndrome. And whereas Fragile X disorders are also associated with tremor or ataxia syndrome, causing tremors, balance deficiencies, and memory problems, ovarian insufficiency, causing reduced fertility or infertility, menstrual deficiencies, and early menopause. And whereas Fragile X is a powerful research model for neuropsychiatric disorders such as autism, schizophrenia, pervasive developmental disorders, and similar conditions including Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, reproductive women's and problems in women, and other genetically based medical conditions. And whereas although the genetic defect causing Fragile X has been discovered and is easily identified by DNA testing, Fragile X frequently goes undetected due to its recent discovery and the lack of awareness about the syndrome, even within the medical community. And whereas raising awareness of Fragile X with the public and the medical community will help patients with the Fragile X gene make better informed medical decisions and help those living with Fragile X syndrome to adapt into society and provide significant contributions toward better understanding autism and other Fragile X associated conditions. Whereas on July 22nd, 2020, more than 60 buildings, bridges, monuments, and entire downtown regions were illuminated in teal to spread the word about Fragile X and celebrate the Fraxa researchers working hard to find effective treatments and ultimately a cure for Fragile X. This year, they're working with partners at Harvard University and other Fragile X international organizations to broaden their reach in 2021. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Troy City Council declares Thursday, July 22nd, 2021 to be World Fragile X Day in the city of Troy, and encourages all citizens to work together to raise awareness of the need for early diagnosis and treatment for the disorder, as well as continued research to find a cure. And be it further resolved that the city of Troy will illuminate City Hall's outside lights teal blue on July 22nd, 2021 to bring awareness to Fragile X's syndrome, not only because it is a rare disease, but because we need more people to understand the important role Fragile X plays in the autism spectrum. It is a single gene that has been identified. This proclamation is presented this 12th day of July 2021. It's signed by myself as the mayor. All members of City Council have signed as well. I'd like to present it to you, and thank you so much, Ted, for being here. It's a weird thing to clap for, but I feel like clapping. I know you're on the Fraxa board, and you have some personal experience. Would you like to share a few words with the community?
I wasn't prepared, but I just want to
That's
say
okay.
thank
Here,
you for all this.
can you do it in the microphone only because of the television? It's okay. Doesn't pick up otherwise.
I just want to say thank you to the council and for this proclamation and for recognizing Fragile X syndrome. It's not an easy life. I'm a parent of a 20-year-old with Fragile X syndrome. It's a life that's also very rewarding. My son just learned how to zip up his jacket at 20 years old, many tries, and it's so rewarding. And those are long milestones, but they're very rewarding. So again, thank you so much for all that you've done tonight, and we really appreciate it from all over the world. So this is great. Thank you for participating in the lighting of your facilities too.
Thank you, Ted. I'll shake this
All right,
hand.
thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And July 22nd, 2021, we'll have it lit up. All right. Thank you. All right, that concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations this evening. We have no carryover items, so we'll move on to public hearings. We have two this evening. E1 is a street vacation request, SV 2020-001, public walkway east of John R. and north of Big Beaver. Make sure there's a yellow sheet, okay. Abutting the 3512 Euclid on the north and 3506 Euclid on the south, section 24. Currently zoned R1C abutting properties, and it'll be introduced by our Community Development Director, Brent Savanant. How are you, Brent?
Good, thank you. Mayor Baker, City Council, good evening. Just waiting for the PowerPoint to load here.
I'd like a vacation request.
That would have been a good opening joke.
I hope it wasn't your opening show, because I just took your thunder.
Stealing my thunder. So, oops. What is a right-of-way? So there's an incomplete slide there. So I struggled. Imagine, if you will, there's about 10 bullet points right here that are really important. So I in preparing for this item, I looked for a definition for right-of-way. And I couldn't find a good one. I found some technical ones, and they're all over the map. So the definition that I kind of came up with that seemed to be like a lay term, a simple term, was a strip of land used to provide access, and this application we've referred to them as street vacations, but there's different kinds of rights of way. There's roadway streets, There's pathways for pedestrians, there's railways, so there's different kinds. So these should probably be called right-of-way vacations, but for whatever reason, we call them street vacations. So in the city of Troy, there are numerous jurisdictions that control right-of-way. There's rights-of-way. Obviously, the city of Troy, there are numerous, there's hundreds of city streets, city rights-of-way. There are county rights-of-way. For example, Big Beaver is controlled, maintained by the Oakland County, by the Road Commission for Oakland County, and there's state rights-of-way. Michigan Department of Transportation obviously controls and maintains or is responsible for maintenance for I-75. This is a little bit confusing in terminology because it's a street vacation, but it's a pathway. But we're here to consider a vacation of a right-of-way that is actually a pathway. So in summary, this is the approved plat for Beaver Creek subdivision. The pathway that is proposed to be vacated is right here, and it's 15 feet wide and about 125 feet long. It's located between Lot 12 and Lot 13 of Beaver Creek subdivision. The pathways here indicated with the red arrow. It was platted or approved in 1992, and it was, if you can imagine, when this was approved, this was just vacant. There may have been a house here, but it wasn't like you see it there. That wasn't approved. That's Tuscany Estates site condominium. That wasn't approved until 2012. So the pathway was put in there for a couple of reasons. One, it was anticipated that this detention basin would go all the way up here, and this was going to provide access to the detention basin, and it was also going to provide pedestrian connectivity to this area. Well, as you can see in 2012, when this was developed, there's a house here now, and this has become a path to nowhere. And what's happened is there are people, according to the applicants, who cut across the detention basin and then cut across this public right-of-way pathway between these two homes, when really there shouldn't be any access at all because, again, the path goes to nowhere. So it's important to note that, again, this is the pathway here. There's a 24-inch storm drain inside that right-of-way, and there's a 12-inch sanitary sewer. So what we don't want to do is give up the right-of-way because we control it now. They're essentially asking to vacate the right-of-way. The city council has the authority that you can accept or dedicate right-of-way, or you can, I want to say get rid of it. I'm trying to think of another term. You can give up the ownership of it or vacate it. In this case, because we want to continue to have access, be able to maintain and replace this if we need to, we need to retain easements for those underground utilities. Planning Commission held a public hearing for this item April 13th, 2021. Recommended approval is 9-0, and City Management recommends approval of the vacation subject to retaining easements for underground utility purposes. And I can answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Brian. Any questions? Councilmember Chamberlain Craig.
Thank you, Mayor. First question was, as I read about there is some kind of usage that's happening and they're trespassing on the private property portions of this right-of-way. Do we know anything around the extent, the volume of that usage going on right now?
No, and it's not private property yet. It's city property still. So we don't. We didn't do any investigation other than the anecdotal information provided by the applicants.
Thank you. So the second question is wondering, I was asking about the volume of usage, wondering could there be a danger of prescriptive rights being invoked if then people no longer can have access to use that property, and then that would be to our disadvantage as a city?
I'll defer that to the city attorney.
City Attorney Bloom.
Yes, so because you're potentially taking affirmative action in maybe giving up the rights to to have that pathway you're still going to likely retain the easements for the public infrastructure that's below ground. So if your question is as to the public infrastructure, no, again, if you pass this resolution that is recommended, then you're taking affirmative action, so the city's rights will be retained.
In terms of public, so yes, understood that we maintain that for the public infrastructure underneath, and that's a common thing when we have street vacations. Just wondered if there are residents who are finding value being able to use that. According to the map, it doesn't look like there's meant to be value in that, and then they could claim prescriptive rights, and what I've heard is they could sue the city for that. But just for clarification, that we don't think that there's much of a volume, or that would not be a danger that we could possibly face.
City Manager Merlin.
Mayor and council, this item is a public hearing, and Mr. Savanant, you did a 500-foot notification?
300 foot.
300-foot notification. So the neighbors were notified, and there was an ad in the newspaper, so we tried to have notification.
And I did see there was a letter in support of it, wholeheartedly in support of it from the neighborhood. So that was positive to see that. Other just final question was, if this decision is approved, would there be some notification to neighbors so they know that? Because they no longer then have that right to be able to walk in the area because it becomes private property. Is there some way that those who might be using that area would be aware of that? Is there a sign that goes up, or how does that happen?
That's a really good point. We've never done that before, but I hadn't thought of that. So I think that there's definitely value in sending notification to the same 300-foot. Like what's a reasonable area? 300 feet seems reasonable. Now, just to piggyback on your previous question, based on, again, with the interactions with one of the applicants, Mr. Snell, it seemed like he took the initiative of putting some signs up, saying please don't trespass signs, and that did alleviate some of the trespassing, so it sounded like it was becoming a little bit more under control. This is really kind of the final piece of the puzzle to vacate a pathway that is no longer needed and ultimately make that private. One thing, I needed the PowerPoint to jar my memory up. This pathway is within one subdivision. So ownership of the pathway, it's 15 feet wide. 7.5 feet will revert to the owner to the south, and the southerly 7.5 feet would revert to that owner to the south.
Additional questions for Mr. Savanant or City Management? All right, I'll open the public hearing. Thank you, Brent. Is anybody, I don't see anybody signed up online. Is anybody in the audience here to speak on E1, the street vacation request? Please come forward, sir. State your name. You'll have 3 minutes.
It should be very quick. My name is Charles Snell. I'm actually the owner on the north side of the property. As Mr. Savanant said, it has quieted down since I did put up a couple of those do not trespass signs. When I did put them up, the people behind us didn't appreciate it because they pulled up the right of way saying, well, it's a pathway. We're supposed to be able to use it. Well, but it's not paved. It's not intended for you to walk through a drainage area just to get to the path and stuff. So it has quieted down, but I'd appreciate just having all the legal I's dotted and T's crossed. So that's it.
Very good. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience here to speak on this matter? How about on Zoom, City Clerk Dixon?
Thank you, Mayor. We do have 2 residents logged in as attendees, so if you are logged in as an attendee and you would like to comment on the public hearing, please raise your hand virtually. Nobody's raised their hand.
All right, how about emails or voicemails? Any submitted for this matter?
We did not have any emails or voicemails for this item.
All right, I think I've covered all bases. I'll close the public hearing. Someone like to move the resolution? We do have a yellow sheet where there was a change for this one. Councilmember Hamilton?
I'll move E1, street vacation request, SV 2020-001, public walkway east of John R. and north of Big Beaver, abutting 3512 Euclid on the north and 3506 Euclid on the south, section 24, currently zone R1C as abutting properties as printed on the late submittal.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Hamilton, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve E1 Street Vacation Request SV 2020-001, public walkway east of John R., north of Big Beaver, abutting 3512 Euclid on the north and 3506 Euclid on the south, Section 24, currently zoned R1C, abutting properties. Discussion. I'll just say, I think it's pretty clear from the picture, looking at the overhead view, that's a path that is now going into someone's backyard and doesn't make sense and doesn't need to be there, and is, I trust city management's recommendation, the planning commission's recommendation, and thank you for the information today and for your comments. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Craig? Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next up is E2, a rezoning request, file number ZJPLN 2021-0001, proposed Lindsay Center rezoning, east of Crooks, south of Big Beaver, 2690 Crooks, parcel number 88-20-28-101-003, section 28, from O office to BB Big Beaver District, also to be introduced by Brent Savedon, our Community Development Director.
Hello again. So we've brought a few rezonings before City Council recently, but just a refresher course for City Council and more importantly for those watching from home who maybe don't know what a rezoning is. The zoning ordinance is the law. It's a legal document, the law that regulates development in the city of Troy. And a rezoning is an application to amend the zoning map portion of the zoning ordinance. It's comprised of over 300 pages of text and one map, and a rezoning is an amendment of that map. City Council is responsible for approving all legislative decisions, including changes to the zoning ordinance. And in terms of process, the Planning Commission holds a public hearing to consider rezoning applications. They make a recommendation, then it goes before City Council, which is why we're here this evening. So the application that we're considering is for the property outlined in red. It's 2690 Crooks Road. The rezoning is proposed to change from O office to BB Big Beaver zoning district. The application indicates that the intent is to convert the existing four-story office building that is presently on the site and vacant to a 64-unit apartment building. This is done as a courtesy. It is non-binding. So although the application could say that that's what the intent is, they're not obligated to renovate that building to a 64-unit apartment building. They could move forward with the demolition and submit a brand new application. And if it is rezoned to Big Beaver, all the uses, the forms that are permitted in Big Beaver would be permitted on this property. The reason for the rezoning is multifamily residential is not a permitted use in the O office district. Rezoning it to Big Beaver would permit flexibility for them moving forward in either repurposing or redeveloping the property. We see here a comparison of zoning and land use on the site. You see to the right is the zoning map. What's shown is kind of silver gray is office zoning. It's on surrounded on two sides, to the east and to the south, and also to the southwest across Crooks by office zoning and office uses. Immediately to the west is single-family residential, but it is utilized as a place of worship. To the north is the BB Big Beaver designation, and not abutting it, but a little bit to the northeast is UR Urban Residential. This is the future land use plan taken from the master plan. You see the arrow pointing to the area in red. That is the future land use designation, and it is designated as Big Beaver Road. So it clearly falls within the designation of Big Beaver Road in the master plan. Here's some verbiage that's taken from the master plan. I think it's I think it's important. I'll just read this really quickly here. In order to remain competitive and continue to be a leader in economic development in Southeast Michigan, Troy must plan for this corridor to evolve in light of a changing economy. And although those words were originally written in 2011, and then the amendment kept those words in 2016, in the wake of COVID, they still are very important words, and it's a very important policy. The second bullet point, the use of vertically integrated mixed-use commercial, office, and residential towers should be promoted. The use of prominent ground floor retail, restaurants, and cafes allows visual interest and activity for visitors and residents. And finally, vibrant high-end businesses and residential district. So these are some verbiage, some policies that are in the master plan that we've considered as part of this analysis. Now, the master plan was in part based on the Big Beaver Corridor study that was adopted in 2006. It seems like a long time ago, but a lot of the policies in that document are still relevant today in 2015. And they were really one of the drivers of what's happening along the Big Beaver Corridor. And you see the middle bullet point there in yellow. This is a really important concept of all of the key concepts of that document. Mixing the uses turns on the lights. Energetic, dynamic mix of uses with a focus on residential. So you see where the O office building with the lack of flexibility just isn't providing what this developer says they need in terms of being able to repurpose that building in 2021. So with the current challenging office market environment, rezoning to BB to provide for either the conversion of the building to apartments or the complete redevelopment to a more viable use, such as residential or even mixed use, is supported by the master plan. So whether the developer, and I've worked with the Jonah Company here for all of my 19 years here, and they've always done what they've said they're going to do, but things happen. They could sell it or whatever. Even if they do not repurpose the building as apartments, they demo it and rebuild to mixed use or to high-rise residential, high-rise mixed use, what have you, still consistent with the master plan. Okay? Again, I can't stress enough, they're not held to conversion of that to 64 units. So in terms of findings, five important takeaways, that rezoning to Big Beaver is consistent with the master plan. That's the most important thing we should consider with a rezoning application. 2, the rezoning will not cause nor increase any nonconformity. 3, the rezoning will not significantly adversely impact any public services or facilities. 4, the rezoning will not impact the public health, safety, or welfare of the citizens of Troy. And 5, providing flexibility in use in a challenging office market is consistent with the goals and policies of the master plan and the Big Beaver Corridor study. Planning Commission held a public hearing on this item, May 25th, 2021. They recommended approval 9-0, and City Management also recommends approval. I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Brent. I do have a quick question for you. Obviously, you've said several times now that converting that to apartments is non-binding. I understand that, and I think we all understand that. Can you, but you've stated anything theoretically could be built that's permitted by the BB district. Can you just give us a refresher? I think almost 2 years ago, you had a slide that had all the permitted uses in BB zoning. Can you give us some of the examples, just so we're all aware? I mean, what are the things that could be built there if it's not conversion of that apartment?
Yeah, the zoning ordinance is this is a zoning district that we call a form-based zoning district, which basically what that means is the form that's to be developed on the sites is really important. And the form that we really want to see here is a relationship to the street. So we want buildings to be located in close proximity to the street, engage the street with activity and transparency with windows and doors. And as long as if the form works and it's high quality architecture with that relationship to the street, we're not as concerned about the uses. It's very forgiving in terms of uses. So it allows residential, office, commercial, restaurant, wide gamut. Does not allow for drive-throughs for restaurants. We want this to be a walkable community, and we find that drive-throughs do not lend themselves to walkability in this district. The bank drive-throughs are permitted, but it's really intended to be to focus on walkability and that relationship with the street. In terms of form, theoretically there's no height limit. So we could have a very, very dense development here. Really what's limiting in terms of height is whether it can be parked. Now, we do have, you're all familiar with this is in the DDA district, I believe, is this in DDA? It's not, okay. Well, even they still have the ability to put a parking deck on this site. With a parking deck with less reliance on surface parking, they could go higher because they could park vertically. And I would stress that although the property across the street is zoned single-family residential, there's no single-family residential neighborhood there that's going to be impacted. So density and intensity is something that we want to see here. So very inclusive in terms of uses, basically the gamut of non-industrial type uses, office, residential, commercial. And in terms of height, it would be permitted anywhere from 1 story to unlimited, but it's kind of an air quotes unlimited because there's ultimately a limit based on whether it can be parked.
Thank you. Other questions? Councilmember Hamilton.
You kind of covered my question. I was going to ask if this was in the DDA, but follow-up to that is, could or should this be in the DDA? and how would that go about? Does the owner have to request it, or I don't know?
Could or should?
Yeah, it's kind of
I think I'm going to look to my right here. I got 2 people over here who.
City Attorney Bloom, you got.
Well, I can just respond. I mean, if you want to amend the DDA district, then you would need to go through the formal process. But all of the entities that are the Oakland County could object to it. You're opening it up to have objections for the other entities where there is withholding.
City Manager Miller.
Mayor, Council, under the Brooks-Patterson administration, the county had released a whole process to review any TIF districts, and this would be highly scrutinized and actually really not feasible to even expand the DDA.
Don't worry. Just curious.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Any other questions? Councilmember Chamberlain Crango.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up on what you had asked, I know sometimes I work well when I have an example, and I think to follow that that ask for, what might it look like if the developer were to do something different? Would 88 Big Beaver be an example of something that potentially, if the developer were to choose to do something different than what is there?
In theory, if the application met of all the requirements, build 2 lines, parking, et cetera, that development would be permitted by right, which means theoretically 1 site plan would one meeting of the Planning Commission would approve that type of development. Now, the applicant is sitting behind me this evening, Jordan Jonah. I don't want to steal his thunder, but he has an application pending for the property to the north, the Kelly Services Building, and he's proposing a significant investment there, including an apartment building and a parking deck and some retail and a workout facility for residents of the apartment, et cetera. He indicated to me before the meeting it was submitted, and we did an analysis of it. There were still some outstanding issues related to parking and traffic, minor, but he indicated to me that he's going to do some tweaks to it and resubmit it. So this is going to relate very nicely to the property that they own to the north. So I think we were talking earlier on that I think we'd all agree that 888 is a terrific development. It's really done a lot for that corner. Well, imagine something comparable in use, maybe not the exact scale, but similar. So on the other side of Big Beaver, we start to get that critical mass for a really, really exciting intersection. So that's coming, and I think I take Jordan at his word. These 64 units are going to complement that. And it's going to be more residents living on or near Big Beaver, more walkability, better for restaurants, better for sense of place and character, and all these things that the Big Beaver corridor study foresaw 15 years ago, and that's finally coming more to fruition.
Thank you. And I was going to follow up, and you actually answered that question around how might this, if the rezoning is approved, this development connect with that adjacent development. But I know that's more when we get to the site plan review down the road. The last question, and this may be a question more for City Manager Miller or Glenn Lapin, was just wondering if Opportunity Zone funding, or I should say kind of that federal incentive, if that was at all at play in any of these developments happening.
Mark, do you know offhand if, I think this is in the opportunity zone, but
Mayor, I believe it is in the opportunity zone, but the only person that's considering it is Mr. Bostic and the bank building property.
the Bank of America building property where there was a mixed-use hotel and restaurant that was approved by Planning Commission about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
It's not Bank of America.
No, it's not.
It's Huntington.
Huntington, thank you.
That's the only
That's-
opportunity zone project, and they better hurry because there's only about 7 years in which I'm not an expert, but in which the capital gains are delayed.
Any other questions for Mr. Sabanat? Is it time for Mr. Jonah to make his?
Good evening, Council. Thank you very much for having us tonight. My name is Jordan Jonah, and I have the privilege of presenting on behalf of my family's company, AF Jonah Development. I do also have Drew Speaks here with me. He's going to be a senior in high school, and he's learning the ropes, so feel free to ask him all the difficult questions. In the ask of rezoning from office to Big Beaver, it does give a little flexibility. I have to say, it's very unlikely that we're tearing this building down and doing a high-rise on this location. We're looking to do a conversion. We want to be open and honest with what our plan is. We want to do a conversion and see what we can do with utilizing the site as best as possible. It does open up a little few doors, but if the building was ever to come down, there would also be a resubmission of the site plan and the new plans that are set forward. But right now, it's a conversion and see what's left after that. There is a larger play on the whole property to the north. We did purchase this about a year ago. In purchasing this whole property from Kelly Services, we did purchase the Lindsay building, which is the building that we're up for rezoning today. And in the last year, we actually bought this March of 2020. And in the last year, I think we had one office showing, and it didn't go too well. We had to get creative. We wanted to look to do something creative with the building. It is a little older office building. The window lines are not as desirable as something that was built today. We're looking at a significant improvement and seeing what we can do with this building and also utilizing some of the land around it to see how and what we can create a unique development in Troy. And hopefully it's a staple for office buildings that need to be repurposed and reused and created a more viable and economical development. I am happy to answer any questions. I do know about the opportunity zone pretty well. We did not take advantage of the opportunity zone. It has to do with capital gains, and we're not in the market. We're really in real estate, and 1031s play better to our advantage with real estate, although we did not do a 1031 on this property either. It's more of a financial play on anything, but I'm happy to answer any questions, concerns may have, and please also ask Drew. So.
Thank you, Mr. Jonah. Any questions? Councilmember Hamilton?
You may not have any answer on this. Do you have any, and maybe this isn't as relevant to the rezoning, but do you have any timeline on when you'll have a site plan for the 64 apartments, or is it really kind of?
I'm sorry, for the 64 units?
Yeah.
There is a draft plan.
Okay.
We're still working through a little bit of the details. This is the first step to really get going and go full-fledged into if this is very viable or not. We do have a draft plan that works for us, but it still needs to do a lot more of investigation work and so forth, and cooperation on both our part and the city to make this a unique site a new project to bring life to it.
Any other questions for Mr. Jonah or Drew? Is your hand up? I can't tell. Okay, Councilmember Chamberlain Crango.
Mr. Jonah, this isn't really a question, but just want to, are you excited about this wider development?
Of course. I've had the privilege of developing real estate since I was in a car seat, so it's odd that I really, really enjoy this. And yes, I love creative ideas to take something that has been sitting vacant, that really is an older office building with cubicles all through the building, and creating new life out of it. I love it. I have the privilege of working with my family, first of all, and seeing change, which this change would be great to see, and I think it'll be a staple for redevelopments, not just developments. So you have to get creative today to make anything work. So.
Thank you. All right, I think that was the hardest you were going to get. So I'm going to open the public hearing Anyone in the audience like to speak on E2? All right. How about on Zoom, City Clerk Dixon?
We do have some people signed in. If anyone wants to speak on E2, please raise your hand. Nobody raised their hand.
And were there any voicemails or emails for this?
None for this item.
All right. I'll move E2 rezoning request, file number ZJPLN 2021-0001. Proposed Lindsay Center rezoning east of Crook, south of Big Beaver, 2690 Crooks, parcel number 88-20-28-101-003, section 28 from O office to BB Big Beaver District, as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve E2 rezoning request, file number ZJPLN 2021-0001, proposed Lindsay Center rezoning east of Crook, south of Big Beaver, 2690 Crooks, parcel number 88-20-28-101-003, section 28 from O office to BB Big Beaver District. Discussion. Councilmember Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. Over the past 2 years, we've had a number of rezone and conditional rezones come to council. And this one is a little bit different, or at least I perceive it this way, than some of those requests that have come forward. And I think that the key difference here is what the adjoining properties or properties, just adjacent to this parcel of land, what its uses are, versus maybe some of the ones that we saw on, Sylvanwood or other locations also near Big Beaver. I'm usually a little hesitant with straight out rezones, and even now I have a part of me is holding back a little bit because there's no commitment to build the concept that was proposed here today. And I tend to be one that wants to see a commitment, but that's more of a conditional rezone. I recognize you have no obligation to do so, Mr. Jonah. And so to me, now the key factor is, well, is it compatible with the adjacent land usages? And to me, it does seem that it is compatible. We are in a very interesting time, not just in the city or in the county, but in the nation in terms of a paradigm shift because of the pandemic and the use of office space and the shift that was precipitated by everyone working from home, or a large population working from home for 15, 16 months, and making the collective workforce rethink what its office space strategy is. And so if the concept that you're proposing with converting from office to residential does in fact come to fruition, which I hope it does, it could be a model, particularly in this city, for what we could do with some of the office space, because there are concerns about if there is a trend from working from home or working less frequently in the office, that's going to change our office footprint needs. And this could be a viable solution. Again, it's very specific to this parcel of land, its proximity already to the Big Beaver District, and its adjacent land usages in the compatibility there. But I think this is compelling enough of a situation where I would be supportive of the rezone.
Thank you, Councilmember Abraham. Additional discussion? Councilmember Hoderick.
It's just fascinating to me to see a developer and a city in a moment of transition and paradigm shifting. I think the way you characterize that, have this opportunity, it's almost Jupiter's aligning with Mars in terms of the timing of pivoting to look at things creatively. And I would think that we would be remiss if we somehow made a decision that stood in the way of that kind of pivoting and creative look that you're giving this building. It is sitting, it needs to be utilized. We have people asking for that kind of density on Big Beaver. Just very recently, I was at a gathering where a gentleman walked up to me who had lived in a number of different cities across the nation, and he'd been living here about 3 or 4 years. And he expressed watching and seeing and knowing what Big Beaver had looked like and how it's evolving and how excited he was to be here, and that he felt he could see what's happening, evolving to a place that made sense for Big Beaver and for all the residents that live here who want to watch Big Beaver evolve to a really high quality, another high quality, it's next generational view, if you will. And Godspeed to you with the creativity. And what a wonderful opportunity for you. This is just a very, very unique time, and we all have to be flexible and creative. I feel good about supporting this. In fact, I often will come up, look, and decide, okay, I'm going to vote yes on this or maybe no, and then I try to argue against myself. I can't argue myself to no on this. And I feel very good about this opportunity, so I wish you well. I know we can't get a commitment on the residential, so that you know, I'm not a developer, but representing people here in the community, this is the kind of thing that they talk about even before COVID. The opportunity for more places to live in the Big Beaver District is something that they're looking for. So I think you're onto something, and I hope our decision tonight helps enable that.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoderick. Councilmember Chamberlain-Crainga.
Yes, just briefly. Mr. Jonah, where you had me when you shared was that once you acquired this building, you tried to sell the office space. You tried, and I'm sure COVID has not helped the matter, and this is why we're talking about this, but it wasn't successful. And so precisely to come for a rezoning when the whole vision all along around this was to be Big Beaver, to have some of this mixed use, that is very compelling. And the idea of it being residential and mixed use to bring people into the mix of Big Beaver. But I think what's key is it doesn't do anything to bring any damage to our beautiful neighborhoods, because those neighborhoods are far from that place. And that has been well thought out when we thought about the master plan. And so as I think of bringing residents into the mix, creating that dynamism, and I also think about those studies, the Big Beaver Corridor, our master plan, and our colleagues who've been on council and have had that vision for quite some time. And when I was on the DDA, seeing through the Quality Development Initiative, 8-8 Big Beaver come into play, and the excitement, you start to see people hanging out around there and spending time, and exactly what I imagine your campus that you're envisioning across the street, this work play, wider campus. And so I feel like we're on the cusp of something that we've been talking about for a long time in Troy. And so by approving this, I feel like it is a step closer. And then hearing your words of creativity, this allowing you to bring a creativity into our city. And I would still reach out to residents. At the end of the day, this is your development. This is your city. And we also want to hear from you. And I think what we are hearing, as Councilmember Hoderick said, is people do want that mixed use, that density, a place in that particular area. I think that, yes, there is a desire for that. So I'm excited about what the future may hold and happy to support it.
Thank you, Councilmember Chamberlain-Crainga. Good? All right. Just a couple quick comments. First and foremost, I think this is consistent with our master plan, which is our guiding principle, and I'm very happy to support it for those reasons alone. But a couple more qualitative aspects of it. I know your family does very quality work throughout our city and the region, and it's very exciting to me to have you be part of not just the Kelly Services property, but to have this connection to that property as well in a redevelopment phase. And having that zoning change to Big Beaver District gives you that flexibility you need, regardless if you do a conversion to the 64 units or not. I'm very confident knowing that based on your reputation in the city and the 19 years that Brent's worked with you, that whatever ends up going there will be consistent with the look and feel of what we're looking for in Troy. And especially that intersection, which, as you know, is the turning into, I mean, I know we don't have a downtown, and I know we can't talk about downtowns, but with 888 Big Beaver and what's happening there, and the Zen City Apartments, and what your eventual plans for the Kelly Services property, and now the Lindsay Center property, I really begin to see an area where people can live, work, and play, and walk around, and have to look at those crosswalks, make sure everyone's safe. But that area is really becoming the kind of the heart of that refreshed area. So I'm really excited about that. With your quality, with your experience, and your vision, basically, and your family's vision. I know it's a family business, so give everybody credit. But ironically, last week I was at a meeting where people were, asking me, kind of peppering me, really in not a very friendly way, what is the city doing to prepare for what everyone's talking about with all these office buildings, how we're going to have problems with office, and I said very plainly, the city's limited in what it can do because it doesn't own all those properties, right? A lot of it depends on what developers are going to bring to us, and we will do what we can to encourage that. And then, ironically, here I am tonight doing what I can to encourage that. And I think this is a great way to paint a picture for other people in the area and other developers to see what Troy has and what can be done. And I'm excited about that. Final point on that. Rezonings are tough, especially without conditions. We know that. We've seen a few less than ideal ones come before us. Your property here is not, protruding into a residential area like some of these other ones were, and I think that's a key factor that our residents and developers need to understand. So, to me, this makes great sense, and I'm going to fully support it and cheer you on, and I know our city will be as well. So, I'll ask for the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you, everyone. I do like hearing the positive thoughts and positive discussion. Look forward to working more in the city here, and there's going to be more to come. We'll be in front of you shortly, hopefully, shortly soon. So thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. And Drew. All right. That concludes our public hearings this evening. Next up is public comment. I don't see anybody signed up in council chambers this evening to speak on public comments. My understanding that we have several submitted via email and or voicemail, and I also understand that we had one come in around 6 o'clock. Since we have so many already, I think it's only fair to seek consensus to allow that additional one. Do I have consensus from council to allow that, to waive the rules to include it? Sure. All right, so I will turn it over to City Clerk Dixon and get comfortable.
Okay, there are a few people signed in to the Zoom meeting, so if anyone on the Zoom meeting wanted to offer public comment, please raise your hand. Okay, no one's raised their hand. So we do have 53 emails to read, and Mr. Bruner was kind enough to offer his assistance, so we will be sharing the job right now. The first comment is from Richard Bates. Hello, City Council members. Thank you to Brian Gould for making the report. Just my 2 cents. Price to replace tables would be approximately $20,000. I called LeBron's Billiard and Supply on Van Dyke and Sterling Heights, spoke with Jeff. $3,100 per pool table plus $800 per ping pong table. He said $15,000 should do it, including installation. It might be cheaper from their Billiard and Supply competitors. Tables get destroyed, holes in walls, floor left a mess from kids using it. Kids were required to have an adult 18 and older in the room with them. However, the room is not continuously monitored. Kids ruin everything, so ban kids. Many times there has been an adult supposedly watching their kids while in the game room, but the kids run wild, ruining equipment. The adult does nothing to stop them, so only 18 years old and older, no exceptions to fix that. Directly north of the front desk is the game room, and that is an ideal place for it. One of the office workers is almost always sitting and facing the window at the side of the game room. Also, there is a camera in the game room. Limited usage during the day. Great. The tables will last a long time before having to be maintained, replaced again. The room could be used on weekends as a designated birthday party room, in the summer for day camps, and the rest of the year for senior groups. That's what the teen room was supposed to be and is used for. Using this room for senior groups and day camps will allow the banquet rooms to stay available for rentals and increased revenue. Again, the teen room is used for senior groups and day camps. If that's not enough, there are other rooms that can be used. All of the other community centers in and around Oakland County have a game room with pool tables. They can afford it and do not have a problem maintaining it. A game room is an essential part of a community, AKA recreation center.
Next comment is from Karen Mrozka, M-R-O-C-Z-K-A. Good afternoon. I've recently started playing pickleball with my friends and family. We are enjoying it so much, but it's very hard to find available courts. We would love to be able to join a league or set up a regular time to play. The only courts available in Troy are at Redwood Park, where there are only 4 courts available. We had a group of 8 people and had to share the courts with several other groups. We could hardly play any games, and there were plenty of people waiting to play. While it is great to meet new faces and interact with others, it is frustrating to continuously wait to play. With the size of Troy, shouldn't we have more courts available? I know it is a growing sport. Some resources even say it is the fastest growing sport in the USA right now. It would be great for our community to make more courts available. It could bring in a large population for league play or tournaments, which could then lead to people visiting the rest of our attractions, restaurants, social venues, etc. It's a great game for all ages, a great way to get more people active. Let's keep Troy as Michigan's sports town. Please consider creating, converting some of our recreation areas to accommodate more pickleball courts, both inside and out.
Next comment is from Peter Pez. Troy promotes itself as a progressive city with many amenities and benefits for its residents. One area that Troy is falling behind is in support of the fastest growth sport in North America, pickleball. Most of our neighbor communities already have or are investing in multiple new first-rate pickleball courts. Troy should pride itself in having first-rate facilities for all sports. With this in mind, Troy should invest in new pickleball courts located on the community center property.
Next comment is from Asil Elias. My family is requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy residents and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre.
Next comment is from Jenny Martin. I'm asking City Council to fund the construction of pickleball courts in Troy. The courts at Redwood Park are usually very busy and are designed well. We just need more parking there. Troy has always been a leader in this area, and I hope that this continues. I am sure there are pickleball players that would help the rec department to assist in the design, since I believe none of the current staff are pickleball players. As a former recreation director in Madison Heights, I have always found getting public input was always a smart idea. I hope that council supports this concept and constructs courts as soon as possible. Thank you for your time.
This comment is from Rick and Michelle Guzzo. Please support the construction of 16 new pickleball courts in Troy at the community center. Pickleball is growing by leaps and bounds. It is an amazing family-friendly sport for all ages to play. The people I meet playing pickleball are amazing, grateful people who want to stay healthy in a fun social setting. Royal Oak is hosting tournaments with 250 players plus. That could be Troy. The players bring additional revenue to our wonderful local restaurants. Let Troy be the place to play pickleball.
Next comment is from Pam Makowski. Metro Detroit is bursting with pickleball players. Building 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts at Troy Community Center is requested to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre.
Number 7, my family, and this is from Denise Barth, my family is requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre.
Next comment is from Ellen Prebelich. My family is requesting that dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre.
Number 9 is from Joe Thilman. I am strongly advocating you build additional pickleball courts in Troy. This is the fastest growing sport in the country, and Troy is well behind the trend. Additional outdoor courts will provide a much needed service and also give money to local businesses. This is a sport for all ages, especially helping the elder population. I have been a Troy resident for 42 years.
Next comment is from Mary Ellen Turner. My family is requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business.
Number 11 is from Rafi Elsha. Hello, my name is Rafi Elsha. I own a business in Troy, and I'm moving to Troy from Sterling Heights to a brand-new home on Chadbury Court. My family and I would love to see pickleball courts in Troy Community Center.
Next comment is from Mark Bergen. This notice to request and encourage that additional dedicated pickleball courts be constructed at the Troy Community Center. Existing public courts are frequently difficult to obtain in the evening. Adding all-weather public courts or a mix of all-weather and outdoor courts would provide excellent opportunities for year-round family physical activity. The addition of lights for nighttime play would allow more use of outdoor courts. Pickleball courts might be an excellent use of the recently demolished parking lot along Civic Center Drive near the Troy Rocket Club.
Comment 13 from Steve Halsberg. Dear Council, as a 34-year resident of Troy and a 6-year pickleball player, I am in total support of the concept of adding 16 pickleball courts to the community center. I am retired and am very willing to help out in any way possible. Please feel free to call me at my phone number. I am really looking forward to the new courts.
Next comment is from Michael Block. My family has lived in Troy for 22 years. We are requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre.
Number 15 from Sharon Shaffron. City of Troy, I have been a resident of Troy since 1994 and letting you know that we need more than just the 4 courts we currently have. Royal Oak has at least 20. Please build more courts.
Next comment is from Susan Holly. My family is requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre. Thank you for your consideration.
J.J. Holly says, my family is requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy residents and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre. Thank you for your consideration.
Next comment is from Patty Bedard. My family is requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre. I have also asked about courts at Bolin Park. I live at South Boulevard and Adams, and the only outdoor courts are at Redwood Park, a 20-mile round trip. I have been a member of the Troy Community Center for years, but every summer I have to go to another city to play. I can't believe a city the size of Troy cannot accommodate its own residents.
19 from Linda Carr. As a 26-year resident, I am writing to my Troy City government with the hope and understanding my desire to improve upon an already growing need in the city of Troy. Yes, more outdoor pickleball courts. Now, I think I know what you're thinking. Pickleball? What in the world is that? Pickleball is a paddleball sport that combines elements of badminton, table tennis, and tennis. 2 or 4 players use solid paddles made of wood or composite materials to hit a perforated polymer ball, much like a wiffle ball, with 26 to 40 round holes over a net. Now, you are thinking, holy, expletive deleted, this sounds so boring. True, however, that is the definition given in 1965 when the sport was first introduced. The United States of American Pickleball Association, USAPA, was formed in 1984. Presently, the USAPA has over 40,000 members and a growth rate of 1,000% since the beginning of 2013. I am here to assure you that it is anything but boring, and in fact, she's included a link to prove it. This is a professional sport. These players get paid. The youngest professional player is 14 years old and went pro at age 12. This sport has no age boundaries. I join the TCC each October, minus COVID year, to specifically play pickleball indoors in the winter. The gym is packed each and every time I play. There are also ladder leagues that fill up every winter. The sport has a certain camaraderie that I have not seen in any other sport I have played. Everyone plays with everyone and friendships are formed. Liquid lunches ensue, supporting Troy businesses. Next thing you know, you're traveling to tournaments together. This sport is a no-brainer if you are worried about the cost effectiveness. It will generate money when adult and youth leagues are formed, when adult/youth tournaments are added, and when adult/youth classes are taught. Tournaments also bring revenue to restaurants and hotels in the city, such as the Troy Senior Olympics that I participate in August in Royal Oak. If you would like, I'd be happy to meet all of you on the courts and give a few lessons. I know you will all be hooked. Oh wait, there are only 4 outdoor courts in the whole city of Troy. This is certainly not enough, so we would have to meet in Royal Oak and then have lunch in Royal Oak. So do us picklers and yourselves a favor and add outdoor courts. 10 to 16 is sufficient. You won't be sorry. We are, after all, the 2015 Sports Illustrated 50th Anniversary Sports Town for the state of Michigan.
Next comment is from Dan Van Bueller. My family is requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre.
Number 21 from Cheryl Armstrong. My family is requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre.
Next comment is from Dave Armstrong. I would like some additional pickleball courts in the city. I own a home on Shrewsbury. I'm 49 years old and lived in Troy for 47 years.
Number 23 from Michelle Phillips. My family has been using the few pickleball courts at Redwood Park, and there simply are not enough courts for the demand. We have tried to use tennis courts, but those seem to be full most of the time with people giving lessons and tennis players. We are requesting that 16 dedicated pickleball courts be built at TCC. One of the reasons we moved to Troy 23 years ago was because of the nice parks and recreation Troy offers. The city now needs to update its offerings with this high demand activity.
Next comment is from Bethany Mosshart. I have lived in Troy for almost 35 years. I have appreciated and taken advantage of the great Parks and Rec programs and facilities for decades, and so appreciate the opportunities they provide for fitness, entertainment, and teamwork. I am requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand for places to play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. I play often in Royal Oak and would love to be able to play and then relax and eat out in my hometown. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre. Thank you for your service to our city and for your time in considering this request.
Comment 25 from Tony Sciullo. My family is requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre.
The next comment is from Lynn. I love playing pickleball and would like to request that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre.
Number 27 from Susan Stroud. My family is requesting that 16 or more dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center or elsewhere in Troy to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. We have many parks that have space to add more courts, and the need is great.
Next comment is from Dennis Kalbeck. I support the effort to build 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center. Pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the country. Troy is underserved with only the 4 dedicated courts at Redwood Park. Please consider adding additional courts.
Number 29 from Lori Kalbeck. Pickleball is becoming a thriving sport in our area. While Troy provides courts at Redwood Park, they are often crowded. Building another set of courts on the west side would give another option. The community center park has plenty of room and adequate parking. Please consider this option.
Next comment is from the Hendry family. I've been a Troy resident for over 35 years, and my family is supportive in requesting that 16 outdoor pickleball courts be built at the TCC. Demand for outdoor health-oriented recreation is on the increase, and the city of Troy over the last few years has taken steps backwards with family-oriented outdoor city amenities. An example of this is the elimination of all the tennis courts at Troy middle schools. Those courts were used by the local families in those areas and taken out while the demand for court time has increased. Pickleball is an outdoor sport that has become very popular. The 4 courts that are located at Redwood Park in Troy are always in use, and most of the public does not even know that they're even there. Having courts at the TCC provides a central Troy location for players to enjoy this outdoor sport, and would also be in close proximity to many local businesses along Big Beaver for people to visit after play. The TCC location has plenty of space and parking to support this project. Many surrounding cities continue to invest in great outdoor family-oriented amenities at their city parks, and I would like to see Troy take these steps to make the city a better place to live.
Comment 31 from Maureen Picard. My family and I would like to see the addition of outdoor pickleball courts at the Troy Community Center. My friends and I currently drive to Royal Oak to use their courts. With the increasing popularity of pickleball, those courts are now much busier than they were in the past. The addition of the courts would not only benefit the city's residents, but also the nearby businesses, as we frequently go out to grab a bite to eat or enjoy beverages after we play.
Next comment is from Beth Messakar. The city of tomorrow today is behind the times with the fastest growing sport in America, pickleball. Troy has 4 dedicated courts that are very popular and 1 yet to be discovered double-lined tennis/pickleball court at Brinston Park. Our neighboring community, Royal Oak, has at least 15 courts. Over 2.5 million Americans of all ages play this game, according to pickleballrush.com. They say, if you build it, they will come. Pickleball is a very social game, and the pickleball community is very digitally connected. Tournaments throughout the state attract players from the Metro Detroit area, and some big tournaments like in Grand Rapids have drawn senior games from out of state. Centrally located courts to the Big Beaver corridor will support the small businesses and restaurants in the area. Bringing Troy into the hottest game in the country is in your hands.
Comment 33 from Ann Balms. I hope the request to add 16 new pickleball courts gets approved. It is a growing sport that is enjoyed by many families. Let's keep people coming to Troy to enjoy this fun sport.
Comment 34 is from Kathleen Donovan. As a senior citizen in Troy who plays pickleball, I know the city is woefully lacking in outdoor pickleball courts. Pickleball can provide a recreational opportunity for many more seniors than tennis can. Please have more outdoor pickleball courts built in the city. I'm sure they can also be painted so they can be used by tennis players.
Comment 35 from Matt Dahmer. My family is requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre.
Next comment is from Matthew Withen. As an avid pickleball player and longtime resident of Troy, I'm requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre. The popularity of pickleball is growing incredibly fast, and adding these courts adjacent to the community center would create a top-tier destination for the Metro Detroit pickleball community, which includes multiple nationally ranked players. At this year's U.S. Open event in Florida, Michigan players won more medals than any state other than Florida itself. The concept below shows a couple of possible configurations, but there are several possibilities given the available real estate adjacent to the community center. In addition to the courts, adding lighting to allow for after-dusk play and trees/tables for shade and rest would make these courts a premier destination for players in Metro Detroit.
Comment 37 from Nancy Thones. Please consider the building of pickleball courts at the community center. I've been playing for about 25 years and usually go to other communities to play due to limited facilities and opportunity to play here in Troy. As a longtime resident, I encourage the support of this sport as many people play here, and it would allow Troy recreation to be on par with other cities in this area. Currently, we only have 4 courts at Redwood, which are nice but always overcrowded. Also, pickleball is taught in the physical education classes here in the district, and it would allow students and families to continue to be active and play outside of the classroom. Thank you, and I'm happy to help or contribute in any way.
Next comment is from Bob Messakar. The city of Tomorrow Today is behind the times with the fastest growing sport in America. Please watch the YouTube video from Loma Linda, California. It would be a good idea for the Parks and Recreation Board to review what the Blue Zone in Loma Linda, California is all about. Bringing Troy into the hottest game in the country is in your hands.
Comment 39 from Ron, Michelle, Matthew, and Nathan Reichenbach. My family is requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre.
Comment 40 is from Robert Dunn. I understand that Troy City Council is considering the addition of outdoor pickleball courts at the Troy Community Center. I am the pickleball coordinator at Lifetime in Troy and in Rochester Hills, and am involved in the national planning for pickleball by Lifetime. Lifetime has within the last 2 weeks launched a corporate-wide initiative mandating pickleball be introduced in every club in the nation with a gym, 130 plus. That the leading fitness and wellness club in the nation is going all in on pickleball should demonstrate that pickleball is certainly on the rise and will be a vigorously growing sport for years to come. I am also very familiar with the pickleball venue options available to my members, most of whom reside in Troy. They are extremely frustrated with the lack of outdoor pickleball courts in Troy. The courts in Redwood Park are small and crowded. There is little parking and no facilities or amenities. The promised courts at Bolin Park remain unpainted more than a month after resurfacing and will only yield 4 additional courts and conflicts with tennis players to use those courts. The Troy Racquet Club is truly a racket, requiring a resident to pay money to use city property and also involves conflicts with tennis players. A group of dedicated outdoor pickleball courts at the Troy Community Center would be a tremendous draw for the city and a tremendous benefit to its residents. Local players are generally choosing to drive to Royal Oak, Sterling Heights, or Farmington for an enjoyable and competitive pickleball experience. Players will often combine that drive with some sort of shopping trip. For me, it is often lunch or dinner with other players or a stop at the grocery store on the way home. The while I'm out shopping mindset is a powerful drive of purchasing decisions. Right now, Troy businesses are missing out on a lot of that revenue. In my mind, the greatest reason for a community to invest in pickleball is that pickleball builds community. I implore council members to visit our club in Troy to witness open pickleball on Tuesday or Thursday evenings or Sunday afternoon. Our club's pickleball community is comprised of men and women of all ages, athletic abilities, and ethnicities. It is truly something that needs to be seen to be fully appreciated. Dedicated public courts would attract players of all ages and particularly families. Pickleball is a great way for people in the community to become acquainted and develop friendships. Pickleball is far more social than tennis. In the space of one tennis court, which is occupied by 2 or 4 tennis players, you generally get 12 pickleball players, 4 players on 2 courts, and 4 players waiting to rotate in. Everybody can play pickleball to enough of a degree to have fun playing with other players. Troy is, or should be, one of the hot cities where people want to live, one of those cities at the leading edge of fitness and wellness programs for its residents, a city that provides the amenities home buyers are looking for. Troy should be the leading edge of pickleball, but it is woefully behind neighbors such as Royal Oak and Sterling Heights. I would jump at the chance to provide any further information the council may desire regarding pickleball. Thank you very much for considering this issue and my thoughts.
Comment 41 from George Renault. As the president of the Sylvan Glen Pickleball Association, our entire group wholly supports the addition of courts at the community center. Please let me know if the club and I can give me support in this initiative.
Next comment is from Patty Wachowski. My family is requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre.
Comment 43 is from Carol P. I think it's a terrific idea to add 16 dedicated pickleball courts to our Troy community. It's become such an enjoyable sport and played by both young and older residents. It's difficult to find a dedicated court in the Troy area, and I'm relatively new to pickleball, but enjoy it immensely. The sport is not only fun, but good exercise for us over 70. It would add to the appeal of living in Troy. Thanks for your time.
Comment 44 is from Marty Forer. Pickleball is now one of the fastest growing sports in the USA and is very popular among all age levels, including the seniors who were the first to love the game. Please find a way to add more courts for the community.
Comment 45 from Dennis and Susan Zakarski. My family is requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre.
Next comment is from Kathleen Ryda. Please consider approving 16 pickleball courts at the Troy Community Center. Troy needs to keep up with the demand of play in the area, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, in addition to bringing consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of business. The Hawk in Farmington has beautiful new pickleball courts, and it is a shame to have to go to Farmington when we would rather support our own community.
Comment 47 from Paula Taylor and Mary Sage. My spouse and I are requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with demand of play in our community, to provide health-oriented amenities comparable to our surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and area businesses. It appears that the center already provides adequate parking for such a worthy addition to the area. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would only require approximately 80% of an acre. We have been taxpayers in the city of Troy for over 20 years and would love to see those tax dollars used for providing pickleball courts for all of us to use and enjoy.
Comment 48 is from Brian Blake. Hello, my name is Brian Blake. I'm a Troy resident. I would like to see the city put in pickleball courts behind the community center, another selling point for the city of Troy. The sport is growing bigger quickly. You'll find them getting used early day until evening. Thank you.
Comment 49 from Derek Gillian. My family is requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy restaurants and places of businesses. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre. It would be nice to not have to travel out of Troy to play. We are having to go to Rochester Hills or Sterling Heights 3 to 4 times a week to play, with stopping at a restaurant in those communities on our way home. All the tennis courts have been removed at the middle school, so we can't even play tennis there anymore. That pretty much leaves Bolin Park, which gets very crowded. Instead of concentrating on tearing down all trees to build new homes and condos, think about installing these courts for current Troy homeowners to use.
Next comment is from Deb Standerfer. My family is requesting that 16 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts be built at Troy Community Center to keep up with the demand of play in Metro Detroit, provide health-oriented amenities comparable to surrounding communities, and bring consumer traffic to nearby Troy businesses, Troy restaurants, and places of business. It appears that TCC already offers adequate parking for such an addition. The 16 new courts and applicable aisles would require approximately 80% of an acre.
Comment 51 from Rhonda Little. I understand that Troy is considering building outdoor pickleball courts. I am a 30-year resident of Troy and ask that you support this effort. I've been playing pickleball for a few years now, and it is a lot of fun for all ages. I have made many new friends through pickleball, and it helps you stay active. My husband, who retired 1 year ago, plays several times a week as well.
Last comment is from Carla Vaughn. The sport of pickleball is extremely popular with all ages, and Troy needs more pickleball courts. In Royal Oak, where many Troy residents play, they recently had 97 people attend beginner lessons, and they will see approximately 350 enrollments in ladder leagues this summer at $35 per enrollment, all run by volunteers such as myself. These leagues are so popular that the number of leagues offered doubled this year. It would be great to see similar offerings in Troy, and courts would also be used heavily for drop-in play. In addition, I hope that the indoor ladders at the Troy Community Center are brought back this fall. These extremely popular ladders were also run by capable volunteers and were always full.
Thank you. That concludes those that have submitted public comment via email. Thanks, Aileen and Bob, for that. Appreciate it very much. Looking forward to having people coming back and doing public comment at the podium so we can actually see the faces behind the comments. Now's an opportunity for City Council, City Administration to respond or reply. I'm going to start quickly. The first comment, I think his name is Mr. Bates. Has anybody from Recreation or from City Administration actually had a conversation with him to discuss this issue, or has it all been via email at this point? Do you know, Mark?
To my knowledge, it's been email.
I think it might be helpful, if I can say so, for someone to reach out to him, maybe have a conversation with him, because I don't think the process of him telling us where he found a better deal on billiards tables versus what the city is proposing is good. But it sounds like he has some good concerns, but maybe if he was here, I'd have him meet with you after the meeting or on a break, is my point, I guess. As for pickleball, I've learned that 16 new courts would take only approximately 80% of an acre at the Troy Community Center, and I appreciate that. I think that I'll start with this comment. First of all, I do know pickleball is a huge growing sport in the city. It was several years ago when we added the courts at Redwood Park. I was on council then. I know Ellen and Edna were as well. And strangely enough, at that time, some on council, I remember kind of laughing about it because they didn't know what it was. And we learned and we knew that it's an issue and it's a growing sport. So I can certainly understand the desire and want for an increased focus on more courts. With only 4 outdoor courts, with the tennis courts at Bolin still being worked on, with the school district shutting down middle school tennis courts. Seems like a lot of their decisions come and try to affect us here at the council table, which can be tough sometimes. But my initial thoughts on this are certainly as we have strategy sessions in November, it's my understanding that we will be looking at capital projects and investing in recreation and such anyway. I think obviously pickleball should be a part of that conversation. There's some nodding heads, I'm sure that my understanding that was probably already on the agenda somewhat anyway, as is conversations about cricket, as is conversations about the aquatic center, and many other things that we're faced with and have budgetary needs. But recognizing to the 50 plus people who did send in their emails, some of them more of a form letter, some of them obviously with some specific instances. I did like the one that made me laugh about the liquid lunches. I appreciate that. It's nice to have that broken up. But we can't be reactive to emails that come through a public comment without looking at the long-term plan of our fiscal health in this city. So that'll be my first and primary focus, obviously recognizing the importance of pickleball to several of you that have written in this evening. Ironically, at the farmer's market on Friday, I was talking to somebody, I was meeting with people, and they were concerned about the tennis courts. They're avid tennis players, and they're waiting for the Bolin Park courts to be done. And they actually had concerns that we're now painting lines for pickleball on those tennis courts because that's going to compete with their tennis playing time. So I do think there's a need for some additional funding and potential conversations about recreation and capital planning and projects for that. But I guess I would urge council to be very thoughtful on those deliberations, and let's not make any rash decisions or try to push anybody in that direction. It would be my preference as we move forward towards strategic planning in the fall. We know we've got a lot of things to look at coming out of COVID, but I'll definitely keep pickleball as a high priority as we go into that. So, anyone else? Councilmember Hamilton?
You covered a lot of what I wanted to say already, but I don't know when we're going to start discussing the American Rescue Plan dollars as well. That could be something. I think outdoor activity is definitely something that is good for the COVID situation. So we could add to those discussions as well. But right, we have to go through the formal process, but I want to try it too. I've never played, so. But let's keep that in mind for that as well.
Councilor Abraham?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, the one thing that has most definitely come out of the pandemic is people being outdoors a lot more over the past 15, 16 months. And that's really manifested itself in terms of some of the feedback that council has gotten, whether it was public comment or through the resident surveys that have been recently done, because we are hearing residents articulate their desire for enhanced trails and pathways, the aquatic center, and doing more than just the refurbishments that are quite costly, but we recognize the importance it plays in our residents' lives. Cricket fields, pickleball, all of these are indications of people really learning about the city's amenities that it has and utilizing them to its fullest and beyond. For the 50 people that have called in, first of all, thank you for sharing your thoughts. It's always good to hear directly from residents. And just because you aren't hearing council take action tonight doesn't mean that we didn't hear you or that we don't understand the needs or we're pushing it to the side. What we have and what we are obligated to do from a fiduciary standpoint is adherence to the budget process. We have a 3-year rolling budget, that gets adopted every May, but the start of that work happens right after the adoption of the budget. We start working on the next year. And part of that process are council discussions and strategies that are taking place in the November timeframe, where, you know, we never have as much money as we want to spend in any aspect of the city budget, whether it's Parks and Rec or whether it's roads or whether it's other capital projects. And part of the input during these strategy sessions are, one, understanding residents' needs, which again, we've recently done a survey that helped inform us of what residents are valuing, but also the public comments like tonight's. Understand that because we do have a 3-year budget, sometimes things that we support may not make it into the next budget cycle. And part of the reason we do have that 3-year budget is that the predictability and the stability of the budget is what lends Troy to being a AAA bond rated city, which is a highly desirable thing, and residents benefit from that directly and indirectly. So when you hear us say thank you, please don't misinterpret that as thank you, but we're not going to move forward with it. What we're saying is thank you. We're going to incorporate this into our next set of budget discussions, which will really ramp up in the November timeframe. So just wanted to make sure residents understood, especially if it's the first time you've ever submitted a public comment and don't know what to expect afterwards. Please know that we heard you, and we're taking that into account, just as we are, the 50 or so people that called in last fall about the cricket fields, or, the 50 or so people that had called in about the Troy Family Aquatic, et cetera. So it's all things that we need to balance, and we need to make sure that we're representing all of our residents' needs.
Thank you, Councilmember Abraham. Councilmember Chamberlain-Crainga.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to start by thanking Clerk Dixon, by Assistant City Manager Miller for reading into the record all of the comments. And especially want to thank our residents, over 50 people who took time to share something that they're really passionate about. And I do have to say, it turns out a friend of mine, her husband is not just nationally, but internationally ranked. This is international rankings in pickleball, and he is in the top 25 internationally in pickleball. And so he reached out a few weeks ago around his interests. And I have to admit, I don't know a lot about pickleball, and I would defer to Councilmember Hoderick, who I believe you have, your husband is a pickleball player, and you know more than I do about it. But I said I'd love to learn more, and I submitted in our weekly questions a Q&A question to the Recreation Department, had a chance to go out to Redwood Park yesterday, and it was true. In the midst of rain at 7 o'clock at night, the courts were packed. I had no place to park my car. It was amazing to see the diversity of people playing, of all ages, of all backgrounds, on those courts. And I am always a passionate advocate of recreation, because recreation is not only for our public good, of course, there's economic benefits of bringing people to the community, as was stated, but also social cohesion. That is the part of it that is always very important to me when it comes to recreation. It brings diverse peoples together who maybe don't always have a chance to interact and play. And that's precisely, you could see that as you watched pickleball playing. So I'm still learning more, and have had offers to come out with my husband and get some lessons. So I look forward to that. The comment I want to raise tonight to residents, and as we think about this, and I wholeheartedly agree that this is, along with cricket, I think cricket as well, and of course our Troy Family Aquatic Center, we have to continue to think about those as we head into November. We do have a budget planning process by which we must stick to. The thing that I wonder that we could potentially consider is thinking about the engagement surveys that we had. So when I heard from Recreation Director Gould, his input was that pickleball did come out in the master plan survey. It wasn't at the top, but it was there. And I'm trying to think back to our recent resident survey, because I know we asked about some different sports. But I'm also struck by things like cricket and pickleball, that this is the second time we've had a large number of residents feel a lot of passion and call in for something. And it just makes me wonder, when we look at those surveys, is there something that maybe we're missing? And we do know in the recent survey that it truly did have a sample size a sample size and demographics to represent our diverse population. But in terms of those who responded, it didn't necessarily always represent that. And that's where sometimes there could be a bit of a miss in terms of what we're looking at. And I know Cobalt, because of that, and I say this as a mixed methods researcher, I'm always an advocate. You take quantitative and you have to find qualitative ways to then substantiate and check that quantitative data, because quantitative data never tells a full story. Is wondering, as Cobalt suggested, is that city management consider some of those different areas, doing some focus groups, taking some of those findings and moving forward to then inform our budget session. And I would presume that's something we don't want to wait until November to do, but potentially around not just pickleball, cricket, but I do think we bear that in mind, and consider around recreation what might some focus groups look like to be able to start getting a wider sense and to be able to balance these different interests. I mean, those focus groups should be representative as well of the wider population. But if we're missing, if some of our diverse population is not answering some of those surveys, I think it does behoove us to think about how do we find methodologies where we're going to the people and we're finding ways to truly get some of that input. So I just would put that out there is, what has been the plan after that Cobalt survey? Might there be a path forward between now and November where we focus on some areas and maybe recreation is a potential option, and we spend some time kind of deep diving into this so we can go into November being informed and knowing that there may be no easy answer as well in November, but to just help us better make a decision when that time is right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Chamberlain-Craig. City Manager Miller, I'm sure you don't have a response specifically to how you plan to move forward with survey results, and I know you're working on that plan. Is that something you'd like to address in a memo to us at some point or something? I think that's what you're asking for, Rebecca.
Yes.
And I'm assuming there would be consensus to have some further information, maybe not, but yeah, okay.
Yes.
I mean, is that something, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you understand
I believe
just
I do,
gave
yeah.
consensus for? Okay, I think that those are good points in there somewhere. We need to look at that, and I know you're planning on things for the fall, so.
Yeah, and
it's a good
as of
time.
right now, actually, we have the bid on the street for the third-party facilitator, so that we are moving along in that process.
Perfect. Thank you. Councilmember Hoderick?
As I'm listening to this, it's not that we don't know that pickleball's popular, and like we haven't known for several years. We talked about it in a budget study session several years ago. Just for context, 50-some people are paying attention. We have a newer council. It occurs to me that we are at a juncture here in the city of, dusting ourselves off from the cleanup of some of the very difficult decisions we made as a community in the last downturn. It included residents voting in a millage operating cap in the city charter that makes it impossible for the city council to ebb and flow the millage without resident input and voting. And so that, not that that's a bad thing, but that adds time to the process of decision-making and budgeting, because we make a decision to put it on the ballot, and that has to be done so many months before, and then it goes on the ballot and we vote for it, and then it's comprehended in the next budget. So as I'm hearing some of the residents rightfully say, it seems like we're behind some other cities. Yeah, we are, because we've been limping along with one arm behind our back as a community, coming out of, that property value plummet. The values come up, but Headley prevents it from coming up as fast as we would like. We are just now at a place where we can be talking about a policy decision made, check me on this, roughly 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we almost closed down our recreation department back then. I don't know if people realize that. The library got a lot of attention, but there was a very difficult discussion of the council at that time. I wasn't on it, but I was watching. We almost didn't even have a recreation department. We cut our police department, again, check me on this, but nearly by a third. And these, in addition to other cuts that went on around City Hall for delivering services that none of us think about and we take for granted every day, but if they weren't there, you would notice type stuff. So over a period of time, our property values have come up. We're getting our operating budget back. There's been a long time healing. We've restored, one of the things I hear about a lot too is where's animal control? Well, before we did that, we restored a traffic safety unit in our police department, which on days like today, I'm sure came in very handy. And that was a big decision given the context of the AAA bond rating in a millage cap situation by charter. It's very dicey decisions that council members make. It's not that we don't know pickleball is popular. It's not that we don't know people really want our trails. I mean, I wish we could just say, here, spend this money and do this. But we have to be very thoughtful. Gratefully, this community has come through with the library millage that now allows us to open 7 days a week. And that took a long period of time. That gives us some relief on the operating so we can actually, start to discuss these recreation areas that are such a huge priority in the community. It's not that we don't know it. It's not that we don't want to be doing it. But we nearly shut it down. When they didn't shut it down, the policy decision was that the recreation programs had to be self-funding, that they have to pay for themselves. As a result, we now have senior citizens in the community saying, why isn't this like this in another community? This is the situation we're in. And I'm not saying that to complain or to defend me or decisions we're making. It's the reality of, I say it pragmatically, so that, as Councilwoman Abraham said, we hear all this input. You're hoping we're going to say, oh yeah, let's direct City Manager Miller and the team to make it happen. We would not be representing you as a taxpayer well at all if we were to do that tonight. Do we factor this input in? Do we already know this qualitatively as we get called into the strategy sessions? That's our job as council members, right? To have a pulse. And we hear you, we're listening to you, and we'll balance it against the priorities and stay involved, stay paying attention. I can remember one time I was with Councilwoman Abraham and we were talking about our AAA bond rating and the millage cap to some people who just glossed over and said, you just go take care of it. Well, we will take care of that. We'll commit to that fiscal responsibility as a team. I know we all do. So maybe you don't have to pay attention to that. That's why you elect us. But know that that's what we're balancing and that we're not ignoring your input. It is very, very valuable, and I don't need a deep dive on a survey to tell me that people are passionate about this sport and that this is an opportunity. Just as I didn't need a deep dive survey to tell me we needed our traffic safety unit put back in place and what it would do for our community here. We get it. We do understand, and we're hearing you, and we'll do our best to represent that.
Thank you, Councilmember Hodrick. Anyone else? All right, let's take a quick break. Sure. Yeah. All right, back on the record. Next up is regular business. There are no I1 is board and committee appointments. There are no mayoral or city council appointments this evening, so move on to I2, board and committee nominations. I'm not making any mayoral nominations this evening, but next meeting I will. Mayor Pro Tem Brooks, do you have any? There's none. That's right. We don't have a closed session requested this evening, so that concludes regular business. So next up is the consent agenda. Would anybody like to pull an item from the consent agenda this evening for future discussion or further discussion? Councilmember Abraham.
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Hamilton, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion carries. All items on the consent agenda have been approved. There are no memorandums and future council agenda items this evening and no council referrals. So we move on to reports. Any comments this evening on the reports? Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to comment on M2A regarding electric vehicle charging. I wanted to thank Mark and staff for, I guess maybe Sarah. It looked like that was a lot of Sarah there. Very wonderful, a lot of details. I haven't had a chance to digest it all. And in keeping with what we were talking about today about establishing our priorities at strategy sessions, I'd like to see us keep this on the back burner at least, and then maybe when we talk about our strategy sessions in the fall. And it looked to me, just from what I was able to glean from it, that maybe the way to go might be a public-private partnership for city facilities, just to get the ball rolling. My thought is if we as a city can lead on this issue and show that we're putting electric vehicle charging stations in cities' facilities, maybe that will encourage a lot of our businesses, such as new developments, to incorporate that in their plans. We were just having a discussion just a moment ago about how automakers are, it is real. Electric vehicles are the near future, not the distant future. And so I believe the city needs to do what it can do to lead on this issue. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Erickson Galt. Councilmember Hamilton, I saw you
said exactly what I was
covered
going to say.
While we're on it really quick, I just want to say I appreciate Councilmember Erickson Galt for making the comments she just made and talking about that. I think anything we can do to help from a policy standpoint to make Troy competitive is something we should always be looking at. And I think this is something that does that, knowing our location, knowing our freeway access, whether it's open or not. But the development, the fact that we are such a powerhouse for the economy and we bring so many people into the city, I think that would be a great something to look at. And I know I've spoken with a couple of people on council about it. And our Congresswoman Haley Stevens is very supportive in anything she can do. So I know there's opportunity from a government level. I love the idea of private and public partnerships, a lot of P's. So just my 2 cents on that. Thank you. Councilmember Chamberlain Craig.
Yes, just a couple of things to comment. Thank you, Councilmember Erickson Galt. Exactly kind of what I was thinking is how might the city be an example before we were to think about moving forward with an ordinance. A question I have that, again, I haven't dived into all the detail, but are there the same potential opportunities for funding for, say, developers, commercial property owners as for the city, or are they different sort of very different funding opportunities depending if you're a city versus a private owner, property owner, like as a developer?
Mayor, the report does include a list of potential funding sources, and we'll have to go through it in greater detail because I honestly don't know, all of that in the exact detail. But I think we kind of get the general direction that you as City Council would like to move closer, move towards that, and we'll start paying more attention to it also.
Thank you, Mark. Another follow-up was, wonder if there might be an opportunity through the DDA, as there are a number of developers, who own property here in Troy, to potentially surface it if they have heard from those who, utilize their space, that this could be a benefit to employees and to others. I know I've been very blessed at the Kresge Foundation, and I think it's been well over a decade. We have a number of charging stations that are free of use for employees as a benefit. So I know that they can be a perk even to just be close to a charging station, whether you pay or not. So to be able to, before we may think of an ordinance down the road, if there's a way to start kind of getting some input. And then I actually had a thought is, I know we did that business survey at some point as well. I believe that did go forward, and wondered where is that at? And I wonder if there was maybe anything that came up in that business survey as well.
Still working on it.
Thank you.
Sounds like a good question.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Chamberlain Craig. Was that it?
Yes.
Okay. I saw Mayor Pro Tem Brooks.
Well, I was just going to add also to M2A, on a personal level, we actually do own an EV vehicle. Because my husband does work for Chrysler, and we are behind as far as some of the charging stations. There are not as many in the city of Troy. I think that we could definitely improve in this area. And it is going to be something that is bigger in the future. So I really appreciated looking at this report and thinking about ways that we can improve this in our city, and I look forward to future discussions in this area.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Brooks. Councilmember Abraham.
So also commenting on M2A, there's, I think, maybe an opportunity. We have our training session next week, or a week from Saturday, I think, with the Planning Commission, as we head into, relooking at our master plan and what opportunities we may have there. As I think many people know, I do work for General Motors, and at one point I was on the EV team, though I am assigned differently now. And it is not the far distant future where EVs are going to be the majority of vehicle sales. It is coming up fast. And it's not just, I'm not just saying that as a General Motors employee, but understanding the automotive industry. This is coming at us fast, and our infrastructure, is not quite there to meet the forecasted development. And it's understandable. There's been a slow start to EVs. Predictions have been off in the past. But now predictions are starting to align with forecasted plans, and so we need to be very ready. And so when we consider new developments, whether it's residential, whether it's commercial, office, et cetera, I think we need to really think about what provisions might we want to put in place to encourage that charging infrastructure, because it is a lot more expensive to retroactively put in charging stations, whether it's a home, especially those, an older home with older electrical architectures. But it's just as costly for a business to retrofit to put in some spaces. So, as we continue to develop the city, whether it's a greenfield site or a brownfield site, we may want to look at and consider as we move forward how we can grow the city and our electrical infrastructure at the same time.
Thank you, Councilmember Abraham. Ellen? Councilmember Hoderick.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a sign of the times where I go up north, kind of my second home up north. It's a little teeny town that does not even have a traffic light, but they have an EV charging station at the grocery store right next to the ice, and where you can buy wood for your campfire. And it's such a, when I saw it, I thought, boy, this just is an indication that this is where we're headed. So I know sometimes we hear from residents after we have discussions like this where they wonder if this is a path we need to be taking. It's clear, it's coming, and I too appreciate this report, and from a policy setting standpoint, it makes sense for this city, for our residents, for our businesses, and the times are changing right before our eyes, so we can either be part of it or not, and it looks like you have a council that's, I think, unanimous in having your backs as you look at things, so.
Okay. That concludes this section of reports this evening. Next up are council comments. Mayor Pro Tem Brooks.
I just wanted to point out that this Wednesday, July 14th, the Troy Garden Club will be having their annual garden walk, which is a great activity. I participated in it in 2019. I believe they did not have it last year because of COVID. And so tickets will be available on the day of, on July 14th at the Troy Historic Center between 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So I encourage everyone to participate.
Additional council comments? Councilmember Chamberlain-Craig.
Just really briefly, I recognize that we had some very severe storms really over the past several weeks, but last week, just even a half mile from our home and into a neighboring municipality, whole trees and electrical lines were down, and I want to speak to residents, if there were any of those in Troy impacted. And I did hear there was someone who experienced a fire due to electrical line going down. And if there's any advice that we could share, I also turn to city management. I was thinking about, I know the city sometimes comes and cuts the tree, trims them, that happened to our street, and don't always like how the trees look. But I wonder to what extent maybe that also there can be a benefit to that in some way. I'm wondering if there's things that we as a city do or we as residents can do around our tree cover and around when there's major wind or things to prepare ourselves. And I know some things you just can't prepare yourselves for, and my thoughts are with all of those who have experienced trouble during these storms. I also just want to take a moment to just state my sympathies. We know there was a shooting in Troy just rather recently, and just to send my sympathies to the family of Detroit Fire Department Lieutenant Francis Dombrowski. And I want to thank our Troy Police Department for all that you've done, being there on the spot, addressing those issues, speaking out in the community, being on the news, addressing it. And it's a reminder, there's a desire around this quality of life. And I say we can't have our great pickleball courts and quality of life if we don't have safety. And we would not be the city we are without that safety. So thank you for being there, as well as the accident of today as well. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Councilmember Chamberlain-Craig. Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to briefly mention that this Friday will be the first time in over 10 years that our library will be open 7 days, and we'll be doing a ribbon cutting to celebrate. And it's been a long time coming, and I thank Troy residents and all who stood up to make this happen. It's finally here. This week is the first week.
Thank you. Anyone else? Let me just jump off that library really quick. So I told somebody several months ago, I said, you know what, we're going to cut a ribbon when the library opens on Fridays again. And they said, are you crazy? Why are you cutting a ribbon? I said, we're going to cut a ribbon because I think it's an exciting thing for our community. So 10 o'clock on Friday morning, public's welcome. The library will be open at 10 o'clock. If you want to come, we'll be out there. It'll probably be raining and it'll be weird. But the idea is we're excited that the community supported getting the library back open 7 days, and we want to celebrate that. And really excited to have our new library director, Emily Dumas. She's worked hard to get things back up to staffing levels as we've reopened coming out of COVID. So 10 o'clock, fairly sharp, with scissors sharp too. We'll cut the ribbon, so please join us if you like. I do want to, again, thank our Troy Police Department and our Troy Fire Department for all the extremely hard and valuable work they do every day in our community, but especially today when you see all hands on deck, and from shutting down freeways to putting out massive fires to communicating with the public. All of those roles are very, very important, and we do depend on you. And thank you so much. And as regards to the shooting incident, and there's always something going on that our Troy Police Department's working very hard at to keep us safe and also to communicate effectively. And I just, again, want to offer our thanks. And I think that's all I have, but thank you, Troy PD and the Fire Department. Looking forward to finding out how bad the damage is out there on I-75 and see when we can get things reopened again. We don't have a closed session this evening, so we are adjourned.